Here we go with the draft, and pick 1, pack 1, we immediately see quite a lot of good Golgari cards. Karasta Guildmage next to Corpsejack Menace. The Guildmage probably the best uncommon for Golgari. Not too sure about the Menace, it's actually not that amazing if it doesn't come out down early. But there's also Giant Growth, Sewer Shambler, and Drudge Beetle, 3 cards I really like in my Golgari decks. And Grisly Salvage, one of the key cards if you really want to go scavenge. So, despite passing several good Golgari cards, I think we have to take one here. And the Guildmage seems to me to be the more threatening card if my opponent plays it. I'm always very afraid of dying to the Karasta Guildmage, whereas Corpsejack Menace is usually, well, it's a threat, but it's only a 4/4, and if you know that the opponent scavenges for twice the amount of counters, you can usually play around that with the help of bounce and instant removal spells. Whereas the Guildmage, you have to have a removal, otherwise you are dead very quickly. And of course it also helps in the early and in the late game. So here we would have a Slum Reaper and a Rakdos Cackler in our colors. The overall pack is pretty weak. Explosive Impact and Dramatic Rescue are pretty good, but especially after passing a Golgari heavy pack, I want to stay in that guild if possible. And I really like Slum Reaper in these strategies. With Golgari, I try to trade creatures as much as possible, and that makes Slum Reaper pretty amazing. It also makes it easier to go draft a launch party deck, because cards like Slitherhead and Gatecreeper Vine become stronger overall. Here we have Drudge Beetle, Ogre Jailbreaker, and Trestle Troll in Golgari colors, a second Skyline Predator, we had one in the first pack, and a Thought Flare for some Izzet shenanigans. Now, there are several things going on here. With a Slum Reaper, we still have the option to go into Rakdos, but there isn't any. Well, if we take a mono black card to stay open, it would be the Jailbreaker, which isn't really a Rakdos card because you don't want to be the Guildgate Jailbreaker deck, but only have more aggressive options. I'm not a big fan of Trestle Troll anymore. It looks like the perfect Golgari card, but this is really not how I like to play my Golgari decks. I know that sends a bad signal, passing this and people thinking, oh, it's a good Golgari come, but I like Drudge Beetle much more in these kind of decks. So I'm not willing to pick up a Thought Flare just to stay open, and I think that Drudge Beetle is actually very important for Golgari decks and its curve, so I like it better than going for a Jailbreaker here. Next up, it looks like we can pick up a Centaur's Herald without much else going on. There's a Staticaster, and all of these cards are worse on Golgari decks than the Herald. There's a Centaur Healer and a Golgari Guildgate. Even Dried Militant, so there's a lot of cards we could potentially play, but none of them are as good as the Herald. And I think there isn't really an alternative option here. It doesn't make sense to pick a Guildgate if we are going to go into a 2-color deck, and the Herald has so much more impact than anything here. Dryad Militant, Dead Reveler, Perilous Shadow, not even cards I would like in my Golgari decks, if possible. This pack is more interesting, with Golgari Longlegs, Brush Strider, and Assassin Strike all viable options. I think that having a decent amount of 2-drops is important for Golgari, and Brush Strider does trade profitably, but it's just not a very exciting card. I like Drudge Beetle better for its its potential to double block and scavenge in the late game. Longlegs is pretty good, but the way this deck is shaping up, I think we can easily pick as the 6-drop removal here. We don't have any 5 or 6 drops yet, and it's always important to have certain unconditional ways to deal with opposing creatures. I immediately saw the Giant Growth, which is usually the pick when you are Golgari. There's a Golgari Charm as well, which can have quite powerful applications, but it's on the other hand, it's pretty difficult to sculpt the board state accordingly. I think Giant Growth is easily the pick here. You want as many Giant Growths as you can get usually in these type of decks, as they are a great way to generate some tempo and even card advantage sometimes. This is the first pack where we don't really get anything. The best cards are blue, which isn't really great because we can't fix blue with the guild gates. We have to wait to gate crash for that. I still think I hate draft the Soulsworn Spirit here. It's a pretty amazing card, and I've first picked it from time to time, so I don't really know what people took out of this pack so that there are still so many blue cards in here. This isn't amazing. There's a Promenade, but somehow I don't think that we are going to splash Soulsworn Spirit, and this is basically the worst fixing you can get. It does cost you a lot of tempo, and you can't get it with Gatecreeper Vine, so it's not really what I'm looking for. I oftentimes end up splashing red in my Golgari decks for cards like Explosive Impact, but then a Rakdos Guildgate, a Gatecreeper Vine, and Grizzly Salvage usually do the job just fine. I'm going to pick Terrace Worm here. I think having one Terrace Worm is actually quite good if you end up with some Grizzly Salvages, as we see here, and lifelink creatures, which we don't have yet. Going to go with Grizzly Salvage here. I'm not going to go Drainpipe Vermins for my Slum Reaper. There's better options for that. And sadly, we don't have any lifelink creatures yet, but hopefully we can pick some up later. It's also amazing that this wheeled, so overall it looks like blue is very open, but being in Golgari means that we probably can't profit from that at all. In the worst case, our left neighbor is also in Golgari, so that would be pretty miserable. There's an Electricity and Racketeer, which we could pick up, but looking at what we have so far, we are basically committed to Golgari, and both of these aren't cards I would splash. So I'm going to go with the on-color card here, also for the signal. And that's definitely too late for Skyline Predator. But at least there's some black cards going around. I could see playing a Perilous Shadow. I hope I don't have to, but I'm not going to take a card I don't want in my deck. Okay, we could pass Chronic Flooding, I guess. Okay, this doesn't look amazing, but I think we'll do fine with the next packs. Palisade Giant, not in our colors. The Charm's also not really something we can use. There's a Stonefair Crocodile, which I usually wouldn't be excited about, but as I said, we don't have any lifelink yet, and the Crocodile has risen in my appreciation quite a bit. I think it's a key card for Golgari, and it's a 3-drop, which we desperately need, despite the Herald oftentimes acting as a 3-drop. It's going to be interesting if anything wheels for us. I would even consider playing an Archweaver, but I guess with a Terrace Ram already, that's not going to happen. The Guildgate could wheel, but overall there isn't that many great limited cards in this pack, so it's going to be really close. Also from our first pack, where we picked the Guild Mage, most of the Golgari cards were gone, except for the Grizzly Salvage, so I'm afraid that we have a lot of people drafting Golgari cards at this table, which, well, we'll have to live with now, I'm afraid. Next up we have some pretty good cards here, Chaos Imps and Call of the Conclave. There is a Trestle Troll and a Launch Party in our colors, Splatter Thug, Knightly Valor, all fine cards. Currently I don't plan on splashing anything, and the question is if we want a Launch Party or a Trestle Troll. We already have one way to deal with a creature, with an arbitrary creature, and we don't have that many ways to generate fodder for Launch Party and Slum Reaper, except maybe for the second ability on the Guild Mage. So kind of hesitant to pick up the Launch Parties that early, and I could see that a Trestle Troll would do a better job for the deck we are drafting here. So I think I'm going to go with the 3-drop, because I'm afraid that we end up with a lack of 3-drops and then we really have a problem in the early game. Here there is Degadrome Imp, X-Bane Guardian, Augur Spree, and Carnival Hellsteed. So I talked about splashing red, and both Augur Spree and Carnival Hellsteed are certainly good reasons to do that, even though Unleash and Scavenge don't really work all that well together. The additional reason is that there are 2 guild gates, which would make splashing really easy. On the other hand, I think that Degadrome Imp is one of the best cards, best black commons for a Golgari deck, as long as you manage to have some scavenge cards. I think that going for the option that leaves our mana in the best condition is actually the right choice here. Even though it might seem weird to pick such a low-powered card compared to the others. Here we could go with our first Jailbreaker, and all the other options, the best option is Hellhole Flailer, and we just decided against the splash basically. And I'm not too sure if we want to splash for such an aggressive card that's not very versatile in its applications. If you play it on defense, it's just a 3-mana 3/2, which is worse than any other 3-drop almost. So I like Jailbreaker here more than Rubbleback Rhino, I think. And that makes me want to pick up some Guild Gates after all. Not amazing, but 4-mana 4/4 is never that bad in this kind of deck. Here we have Golgari Decoy, a powerful Golgari cards. I also love Aerial Predation because it deals with a lot of threats that Golgari has trouble with. And I actually prefer to have a main deck Aerial Predation to having Trestle Trolls, which kind of shows you how much I like the Predation. So Treasured Find is not an option for me. I think it's very slow and it doesn't do anything in the early game, so I don't really want that. I think it's between Decoy and Aerial Predation, and despite me wanting to pick Aerial Predation, Golgari Decoy is significantly stronger, and it's a great addition to this deck, even though it can be kind of slow sometimes. Here we have a Rakdos Guildgate, a pretty easy pick. I don't want to Shred Freak, and the Guildgate is both good for the Jailbreaker and if we end up splashing some red cards. This is where I pick up an Aerial Predation for sure, and I'm definitely going to main deck 1. Rakdos Rage Mud, once again, a Rakdos option. We see that Golgari isn't really open, but I think we are still fine because people are picking different cards than those we want. Like Stonefire Crocodile and Golgari Longlegs, 2 amazing cards in Golgari, so I can't really complain. I like Stonefire Crocodile better here. I have high respect for Longlegs, but I need to fix my curve, and the Crocodile is amazing with Scavenge and the Guild Mage and Giant Growth and basically everything. This is the pack we opened, which didn't have much to start with. We could pick up an Archweaver. Alternative would be to Hate Draft Rootborn Defenses, I think. But we might want to have this against Flyers. And here we can actually Hate Draft some Flyers, maybe the Tower Drake, because Fairy Imposter takes some more work to get going. And we get a second Rakdos Guildgate, so now we basically have a free red splash and can play the Jailbreaker on offense as well. Pack 3, and this is pretty weak. Wow. Even with the red splash, the red cards aren't amazing, or aren't cards I would want to splash for. Lockstone Smiter not castable, Is It Static Caster not castable, Void Wheeler not castable, being the best cards in the pack. We don't want Civic Saber, and that means that only Golgari Longlegs remain, which is a pretty weak first pick. But given that we have 0 5-drops and Longlegs being probably the best one, I think that we really don't have a choice here. That's pretty bad. Oh, that looks better. We have Lotleth, Troll, Slime Molding, Drudge Beetle, Sewer Shambler, and Launch Party, which means that there is a realistic shot at tabling one of these, and I would love any of these commons, with Slime Molding being okay but not amazing in Golgari. I'm going to pick the rare here. It's very difficult to stop and a great 2-drop. Next up, we still don't see any red cards to splash for, which makes these Jailbreakers kind of weak. We could play both of these Guild Gates just as tapped Swarms, basically, but I don't know if that's worth it. I still think that the Jailbreaker is the pick here, though. I'm not going to hate draft something out of a pack where there's so many good cards, because I don't even know if I accomplish anything, and the Jailbreaker is certainly not going to be bad. This is very interesting. We get some empty packs and then some full packs, so that's kind of unfortunate. But we have basically a second long legs, which we don't want. We have a black-green Guild Gate, which would be good if we don't end up splashing red. But there is Giant Growth, Stonefell Crocodile, and Daggerdrome Imp, which are all amazing in Golgari, in my opinion. I'm going to go with a second Giant Growth because I think that's what this deck needs most, hoping to table one of the creatures, which is also more likely than tabling a Giant Growth, I think. Here we have a third Rakdos Guild Gate, but we don't have any red cards, so sadly that doesn't make any sense. But there's a Daggerdrome Imp. Pretty late Teleportal. I'll try to keep this in mind for the matches because it's very easy to lose to that. Here we have a third Daggerdrome Imp. That's kind of pushing it. We don't have that many ways to make it stronger, but it's easily the best card for us. And there's an Explosive Impact. Now that's interesting because I really like Explosive Impact, and we have two Rakdos Guild Gates anyway, which we want to play to make our Jailbreakers better. So I think we might pick up a splash after all, with this being much more exciting than Mind Road or X-Bane Guardian. And sadly the empty packs continue. We could pick a Rubbleback Rhino, but with the 5 drops we have already, I don't think that's really necessary. Let's see what we would even play here. It probably looks somewhat like this at most. So that's 22 cards. We might want another playable, which could be the Rhino, but we could also hate draft the Skywatch and not worry about it too much. Let's go with the Rhino. Who knows? We don't want to be stuck without options. Here there's a Mind Rod and a Deliverance. We aren't going to populate. I hate to play against the Deliverance, but I'm still going to pick a card that's more likely to make my deck. We could put Civic Saber on our lifelink creatures, but +1/+0 isn't really that amazing. We don't have that many 2-colored cards. It's great on the Troll, of course, but I don't think it's a card I want in my Golgari decks. The same goes for Mind Rod, but I might board in Mind Rod if I see that it could accomplish something. Now, this is an interesting decision between Drudge Beetle and Sewer Shambler. We do have quite a lot of 2-drops now, and Sewer Shambler has a much cheaper scavenge cost while also having evasion against certain decks. So I think mixing it up a little bit with the Shambler here is a good idea. Another strong pack with Keyrune, Skywatch still in the pack. We could pick up the Deviant Glee. I don't know if I want to play it, even with all these Daggerdrome Imps, but they certainly make it more exciting to do so. We could also go for the Keyrune, but I'm really not a big fan of Keyrunes in general, and it's not all that likely to be able to activate it. And a Dark Revenant. We probably won't play, but doesn't hurt to pick it up. And this looks like we want to hate draft the downsize. X-Bane stack isn't going to make it, so let's take the instant. Here we go. I think this is going to be rather easy. We probably just have to decide on a very few cards to cut, and then we'll be good to go. I mean, we do have quite a lot of playables here. It's just that we probably don't want all of them. Especially we don't want 20 creatures. That's pretty obvious. So kind of like what we are working with here. I'm going to splash the explosive impact off of 2 guild gates, making my jailbreakers much more likely to be able to attack, which I like. And I think I'm going to rely on the few scavenge creatures we have to make a Daggerworm Imp stronger. I want to play all of them, also because of Slum Reaper, and to have the most 2-drops possible. I'm going to cut the Deviantly for exactly that reason. And I think we have to play all of these spells. I'm not too sure if we always want to main deck the Predation, but with the Daggerworm Imps, on the one hand we can scavenge them, and then we have a flyer that probably blocks everything. On the other hand, this clears the way for the Daggerworm Imp to ping continuously and gain us some life. So this is something I'm not too sure about. Overall, this looks like a 17 land deck with a Grizzly Salvage to find a land if necessary, and our mana curve being very, very reasonable. It's difficult to flood with Golgari, but with a salvage there's no reason to go up to 18 lands or anything. So with 2 lands already, this is 24, and I'm looking at 1 more card to cut here, which could be Rubbleback Rhino. Given that we don't have that much scavenge anyway, it doesn't seem amazing. And I want the Trestle Troll in this deck as well as Aerial Predation. One of the easiest ways to lose with this deck is to fall behind to flyers. We have certainly almost no way to raise them. So I'm going to take out the Rhino, probably board it in if necessary, and that should give us a pretty nice mana base as well. These are all black-green, this is basically colorless, so I think going for an even distribution of black and green is our best shot here. Don't even know which color we want more of, given that we have 2 black lands that come into play tapped. We might just want to have an extra swamp, but when we look at Centaur's Herald, the giant growths, then it might be necessary to have double green early on, because you can't play a green card and giant growth without double green. You can't, well, Grizzly Salvage needs both, I guess. There's also the scavenge, the double green scavenge on the decoy, but that's for 5, so it's not really a big deal. I think you could go either way on that, but the 2 guild gates make me want to play an extra swamp, I believe. So, well, we could play a mountain. Then we would have 3 ways to cast Explosive Impact, and basically always have an out to find a red source, an untapped red source if we want it. But I think 2 sources for 1 impact is fine. The one problem is if we salvage and we see both guild gates, we almost have to take it if we still want to be able to cast Explosive Impact. That would be a reason to play a third mountain. Yeah, maybe we just do that. I think our mana base is fine with 14, 15, 17, giving us 8 black sources, 8 green sources, and 3 red sources. That looks like a good deal. Same amount of green and black, so we have the same chances to have that. 3 sources for 1 red card is a little bit too much, if you ask me, but this deck should be able to function even with the mountain. Let's hope it doesn't harm us too much.